what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Pair Program. I'm your host, Tim Winkler, joined by my co-host, Mike Gruen. What's going on, Mike?
Not much. Just back from vacation, so feeling pretty good and relaxed. How are things going with you?
You and the rest of the world.
Exactly.
More out of office replies than I've ever seen in one week. But that's encouraged, right? It's kind of the time of the year, the summer. Doing well. I love that we record these on Fridays. It's always a feel good day. So let's talk a little about what today's episode is. So we're going to be covering this topic of empowering teams. Some may categorize this as managing up. And on this episode, we want to discuss, with startup tech leaders, some that have seen it also from like product side and the engineering side, and hear, their direct experiences empowering, their teams to kind of take ownership of their work. So obviously, like understanding some of the best practices for driving change from, this bottom up approach. Both of our guests have extensive experience in leadership roles for, multiple startups of varying stages. David and Anand, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim, for having us.
For sure. All right. And of course, before we dive into the meat of the discussion here, we're going to kick it off with a fun segment that we call Pair Me Up.
Pair me up.
This segment is, where we all kind of go around the horn and we rattle off a complimentary pairing. Mike, my friend, go ahead and lead us off.
Yep. As I said, just back from vacation where we did a little road trip. So my pairing is road trips and beef jerky. I just find that is my snack of choice for a road trip, high in protein, stinks up the whole car. My kids love it. Not really, but but yeah, that's my road trip snack of choice.
Dude, I did this one already. I've done road trips and snacks. You can't do that again.
Well, but this is my choice. This is my pairing of a road trip and a specific snack. Okay.
All right. Well, let's get even more granular then. Like, what kind of beef jerky are you talking? Like teriyaki, or are you going with
I mean, I can do teriyaki. I like a spicy one. So some of the spicier ones out there, black pepper or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just keeping it, not too much, but
just
whatever.
Keeping it stinky.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever stinks up the car the most.
That's right. Good stuff. Yeah, love road trips and car snacks. Have gotta be a part of the ride. Cool. I'll jump in. I'm gonna go with changing barbers and guilt trips. Just because I've always thought that it's kind of this fascinating relationship that you build with your barber over the years. I personally, I've been seeing the same barber for almost 7 years at this local barbershop around the corner from my house. And, it's a Korean barbershop. And I've come to find out like it's the culture when somebody leaves or is let go for whatever reason, you never really get the story as to like what happened. It's kind of a bit awkward to bring it up or discuss it with the other barbers. Like they'll only relinquish so much info. And so I went into my barber today actually to get my hair cut, and she was no longer there. And she had been let go because like I know her schedule, and this was one of her days that she was in. She was let go, and so I had to trial out a new barber. And this entire time, like I just had this overwhelming feeling of guilt, like I was cheating on my previous barber. And it's just an odd feeling. It's, you build like a unique relationship, I think, with your barber, because you see them so frequently, like on a monthly basis for 7 years. I've been seeing this woman, and to have them no longer in my circle, it's like something's missing. It's just an odd feeling. So anyways, for those watching, this video version of this podcast, let me know in the comments if we think Angela's a keeper or not. She's new, so I'm still getting into it.
It's funny because I went to the same one for about 13 years. They ended up selling the shop. I knew the whole story, actually. It's a little sad story, but whatever. And then I went to the same barber for probably 6-7 years. And then she ended up moving to LA. And I've been in search for a new barber ever since and have yet to find one that I really enjoy and click with and whatever. Like I don't, it's sort of like going to the dentist. I don't want a lot of talk. I just want to go in, exchange some pleasantries, get my hair cut. It doesn't have to be a whole thing. But anyway,
there's a sense of comfort that, they know what they're doing with,
exactly,
with their hair. So, anyways, it's a little bit bittersweet for me today, but we move on. We'll bake that into the topic somehow, I'm sure. Cool. All right, let's kick over to our guest, David. Why don't you begin and just kind of give a brief intro and tell us your pairing?
Sure. My name is David Jorjani. I am currently the VP of Product at Sayge, a young startup, and I'm also teaching at the University of Toronto, software engineering and entrepreneurship and communication. So that's my second role or career. For pairing, my first thought was around food, but now that you brought up travel and road trips, I'm going to pair up working and traveling at the same time, which is something that I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 months. Everybody thinks I'm on vacation, like when they hear like, oh, you're in Croatia. But the reality is I do actually work a lot more than going out sightseeing, because after a little while, like I've seen all the churches, like they all look similar after a certain point, or like all the other places. So anyway, so that's my pairing of choice today. And I got to try a new barber after 2 years in North Macedonia, which I couldn't even speak the language. So that cuts out the small talk.
Yeah, talk about getting out of your comfort zone. You're in a whole new country getting a haircut. So
did you just show them a picture? Like,
I literally got a person who spoke English on the street to explain what I wanted, and the barber did it for me.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So where are you right now? You're in Macedonia?
No, I'm in Zagreb, Croatia. This very moment, Croatia. I'm flying to Spain tomorrow.
Awesome. I love it.
On that note, I may say here, but usually when I say here, I mean Canada, because that's where my mentally home is. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Appreciate it. Good stuff. Good pairing. I like that. Let's kick it over to Anand. A quick intro from yourself and then your pairing.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm Anand Safi. I am the Director of Engineering at Mark 43 currently. I am physically in Canada right now. I live in Montreal. And my pairings are going to be focused on a little bit of kind of all the other things. First, I'm moving cities. So my first pairing is move and decluttering. That's been on my mind, actually. I always feel I have so much stuff that I've hoarded when I stay at a place. The second thing is around food, which is burger and fries, which I plan to get once I wrap up all my move stuff. No burger and salad, just burger, fries, and a pint of beer, just classic. And will be changing barbers as of next week because I'm moving the city. So really mixed feelings. So I think we're all in the same space around barbers and our lives in general.
Yeah, that's great.
Actually, at half an half hour after we wrap up recording, I'm going to try a new barber. I have an appointment all set up, and we'll see how it goes.
How timely. We'll have to regroup for a follow-up show, maybe like tomorrow, and just see how everybody's cuts turn out. I love the decluttering thing, the decluttering pairing. It's like, it's such a good reason to do it. And I feel like it never quite happens when you're just comfortable in the moment of living in your situation. There's always that sense of like a little more freedom of just getting rid of stuff because you just aggregate so much stuff along the way. But, and then who doesn't love a burger and fries? I mean, that's a good reward for, for wrapping up the move. So I applaud that. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Good stuff. Well, now that we've kind of wrapped all that up, let's dive into the heart of the discussion here.
Let's dive in.
So, as mentioned, we're going to be talking about empowering teams. And so, as startups evolve and these teams scale, it's important for leaders to be prepared for how to best form some autonomy amongst your team members. And, in startup fashion, there's always going to be a limited amount of resources during certain stages of growth. And so with that, with the limit of how many people one person can manage effectively and how are you aware of what that limit is and those numbers of folks before you start feeling, that you can't quite control it or you've lost a bit of that effectiveness. How can you feel confident that you can empower that team, the larger that they grow? It's a unique skill set. So we're going to break it down for our listeners, discussing some specific examples of this and how it's done in startup settings, how you find that balance of, being call it the nexus of tech leadership knowledge and providing all of those answers versus empowering them to kind of help themselves and help each other. Anand, let's start with you. For context, maybe giving our listeners a little bit of background on your role over at Mark 43 and from a size perspective and the number of folks that are on your team, what stage you all are at. And then obviously we'll explain when you hear the term empowering teams, what you think of, and then we'll jump over to David from there.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So Mark 43 is a 10-year-old company with around roughly 300 headcount, Series E private VC-backed company. I currently am the director of engineering for the CAD, that is a 911 dispatch product division. I have 5 teams reporting into me. So that's kind of a headcount of 35 engineers overall, including staff engineers kind of under my leadership. And for me, empowering teams is at 2 levels, actually. First is just because I'm in this manager of managers role, the immediate people that report into me, I want to make sure that they're also a team of managers and not just a group of managers. There's an important distinction that they also at the peer level feel connected like a team. We tend to keep that typically at a 6 to 8 kind of direct report count. That is the ideal balance. We are really striving towards 6. Not more than 6 reports. And at the team level as well, right? For each manager, we want to have ideally 6 to 8 people, which includes product design and engineering. So roughly 4 to 6 engineers per team in that regards, actually. And coming to the empowering part itself, for me, it delves down to just striking a balance between autonomy, as you stated, and then accountability, actually. Because when you give or kind of want to encourage autonomy in teams, they don't know kind of with that autonomy, whatever they're striving to do or willing to change, what are the parameters that kind of leadership or the exec team is looking to get out of it, right? So providing the teams clarity and clear kind of accountable metrics that this is what we expect, no matter how you structure it, deliver it, sort it out, prioritize. This is where we want to move the needle on kind of a business North Star goal perspective, actually. So that empowering comes with a little bit of responsibility on both sides, actually. That is my present take on it as I navigate kind of the situation of growth and scale at our company. I'll stop there and then kind of turn it over to David for his thoughts.
Yeah, awesome. David, a quick intro on your background and a little more context into what's going on over at Sayge. I think it's super interesting to begin with of what you all are actually doing as a company. I think there's a lot of play into our theme and topic. So a little context, and then how you envision empowering teams.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. So my title officially is a VP of product at Sayge. We are a very young company. I do work with 4 engineers and 2 product managers and a designer. And I'm new in this role. I recently started I lost count 4 months ago, I think. In the previous startup, we grew and we were acquired. So there was some experience in the past as well. The theme of empowering team is dear to my heart because it is also something that we're working towards at Sayge. We are a platform that enables empowering individuals and professionals through coaching. So we actually match up first-time managers, people who are going through transition, changes, or anything that mostly professionally that might be happening in their work lives to work with a coach and be able to kind of level up in some ways, right? And whatever it matters to them. So that's the relationship that we facilitate. I think Anand talked about the 2 things that I had in mind when it comes to empowering teams. And the first one being clarity. Empowering means like the team needs to know where we want to go as an organization and where they want to go as a team and how each individual plays a part into that. And the second component of it being trust. They trust that they can make decisions, they can take actions, And even if they make a mistake, I'm not there to blame them or point fingers or anything like that, or anybody else on the team. So that's the second component of it, and they'll figure it out on their own. I'm a lot more hands off when I know the team knows what they're doing. When they figure it out, they've got into process and a groove. And I can be more hands on when and if they need it, so they know that they can come to for help. But also they know that if they don't, I trust that they're going to move forward with whatever they need to accomplish.
I think your last point about trust is an important one, and it's one that we use at my company a lot. Is we talk not just about the trust, but also that allowing people the freedom to fail or the comfort to fail. Like, it's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. It's what you do, right? It's like learning from that mistake and growing and learning from it. And I think that's an important part of empowering teams. I like to call it like emancipating teams based on this book that I read. But like this like idea of like really allowing them to have a lot more. It's because empowering to me is like you're still giving them power, which still implies that you're retaining some aspect of it. Whereas I really like to have the teams feel like that they have a lot more control, which means they have to be able to experiment and feel comfortable. Like, it's an experiment. Not all experiments go well. Not all experiments are successful. And in fact, we tend to learn more from failed experiments or things that didn't go the way we expected than we do from things that go the way that we expected. So that trust aspect is an important part. One of the other things I think, Tim, you sort of glossed over in a way is like, I think there's a lot of people who don't really understand what it means to empower a team and to get, they talk about it all the time and they think about like, oh, well, if we just tell them the why and explain why what they're working on is so important, that's empowering them. And they don't really get that, like, there is this notion of like, no, the people doing the work are making the decisions, and the decisions are much more bottom up, and the ability to do that. I can't tell you how many like leaders I've talked to who think that they're empowering teams, but really at the end of the day, they're still the ones making all the decisions. Everything is run by them. And I think that there's there's that missing link. I think people just don't understand what the value of allowing the people who are doing the work to make so many of the decisions. To me, I wouldn't be able to do my job. I wouldn't be able to scale if I had to be involved in all of the decisions. I care about a couple of things, and I trust my team to bring those things to me when it's appropriate. Otherwise, might move forward without me. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
It's interesting. I've usually worked in my last so many roles, I've only worked with founders and co-founders, and I find a lot of founders and co-founders find it very difficult to let go at times. And initially, it was hard for me to understand why. Like, just let it go. We've got it covered and all those things. But the reality of it is, for them, they've built and spent years and years of their lives, so it becomes a little bit hard to let go. And to your point, like building that kind of like relationship trust from my side or like other leaders in the company will enable them to scale up as well, right? So that's been a journey for me to go through in the past little while, and I'd like to second that. And before I forget, you mentioned the book that you read. I'm curious about that before I forget.
Oh, Turn the Ship Around by
David something.
David Marquette, I think is the name, something like that. We can give it out afterwards, but yeah, Turn the Ship Around. Great book.
I just finished the book and saw the name Emancipation. I was like, how do I feel about this?
Exactly.
It would be a two-way conversation. Let's put that aside.
Exactly.
So I want to also kind of point out too, I think, David, your example of working closely with founders, I think this is a really fascinating concept that is pretty common in seed to Series A stage startups. It's when you get beyond that level, I think, is where this intricate form of trust needs to kind of be passed along from founders. No longer maybe have that directly. Everybody's coming to the founders, right? At seed stage, like that's kind of the thing. When you get to this point where you're putting in that next layer, and that it goes across a couple of different spectrums in terms of, you're right, the founders have to feel that comfort of letting go of I trust that this, call it director or VP, whatever level you want to say that is, can take our vision and values and make sure that that's relayed appropriately through the next wave. And that's I think one of the most fascinating transitions. And that might be like A to B, where, you've let go of those reins as a founder, and, you're instilling that trust that the next level is going to confidently, bring on the next wave of folks. And I always think that each stage of a startup has those intricacies. Anand, when you're in an organization that's larger, you've been with them for some time, and you also are a part of a number of mentorship communities. Have you seen like any? I guess is there any differences in that level of empowering, through those different stages, where it might be a little bit more intimate in that first handoff from the founders to the next level versus, there's 2 or 3 levels there, like call it Series C and beyond? I'm just generally curious.
Yeah, I think to your point, and as David rightly stated, right, there's a much higher kind of role on the founder's part to play in that kind of C to Series A. It is their job absolutely to make kind of the person stepping into some of their roles and responsibilities to make them feel comfortable and day to day kind of showcase that they are truly offloading kind of responsibilities, right? I often hear from folks that they say that, okay, yes, now you are driving this, but then there are still side conversations happening where decisions could be made. And then the person who feels that they're stepping into that learn that, okay, the founder or kind of the person who was historically leading it is still influencing the decision in one way or the other, actually. And that kind of causes this classic dilemma, actually, okay, how do I manage up? And that too at that founder level, which is the highest level for folks, right? So that exactly is, I think, where it's much more on the founder to make people feel comfortable and known that it's really hard to let go, but you need to start doing it actually iteratively to reach a point in like a 3 to 6 month time where there's a clear division of, okay, I focus on the strategic part, you focus on the execution part, or whatever that kind of split might be actually. For post Series C and D, it's a little bit easier because of kind of the team size, and then there are many peers in the situation. Your kind of day-to-day focus is a little bit fragmented. It's not kind of you're doing everything at once, where you're doing not only kind of technical feasibility, a little bit of biz dev, a little bit of P&L, everything you would do kind of in that C to Series A ones. It's okay, you're more so in terms of we need to get more product market fit or drive more adoption or increase our kind of launch ARR. You have kind of a finite set of goals or parameters that you will play in. So then it's not that difficult in terms of delegating kind of a thing or two as you yourself determine kind of your next career path and growth opportunity in that regard. So that is a little bit easier transition, but the ones that have less experience in, I'm sure it's incredibly much hard as I'm hearing from folks in the industry and from you folks.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there's some founders who I was having this conversation over the weekend with someone else. It doesn't matter who, about giving up that control sometimes a little too early, or feeling like, oh, we hired this VP of whatever, they know what they're doing. So I do think that there is the other side, right? There is the, oh, well, this person's got it. And this gets back, I think, and onto what you were saying about really giving clear guidance and metrics, and like, let's make sure that we all are aligned. If there's good alignment, then that freedom and letting things go is great. If that person gives, if the founder or whoever gives up a certain level of control to someone, but there isn't that clarity of, are we actually going in the right direction, I think can be equally bad. So it is definitely, I think it's a balance, and, that's an important one to strike. But yeah.
Building on what we talked about earlier, we talked about trust. When it comes to the team members, they trust that we as leaders will not kind of like blame them or hold them to a mistake that they will make. I want to flip that over. Trust is on the other side as well, like me coming in to take over something from the founder, especially if we don't have a prior relationship, or especially if they haven't worked with me before. I feel like it's on me to build that trust with them enough that I can say, okay, David, I know what you're doing with this. And when it comes to this project or initiative or area, I'm going to let you run with it. And based on my experience, and I hopefully will get better at it, it will take months to get there. And it's an active role that I play as a team member for my founder.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think trust is something that is, without it, it doesn't scale effectively. The teams don't scale effectively. But let's dissect trust, because I think there's different ways of building trust with folks on your team. I'm generally curious on how you guys navigate this. Obviously, you're having conversations with folks, and I'm pretty sure. Are you both distributed teams, or Anand, are you in an office? I think, David, you mentioned that you're a bit remote.
Yeah, I'm remote as well, fully.
Okay. So, how you build that trust when maybe you aren't physically in contact with these team members as you once were, maybe, pre-pandemic, right? So, what is it that you all are doing to align this trust?
Yeah, I can say for me, when I started in this role 18 months, it was remote entirely, and it was pretty kind of new for me in the remote setting. I've historically been kind of an office person. So the number one thing for me was to show genuine interest, right? The difference between kind of listening and hearing. When somebody was trying to just try to form a rapport with me or kind of form a bond in terms of knowing where their genuine kind of interests and constructive criticisms lie, actually. So just wanting to make sure that I don't want to just hear as soon as they stop kind of saying something. I want to immediately rush to the answer, or just kind of impart my wisdom, thinking that I am coming into this role because of some specialized skills from the industry or something, right? I want to know exactly what are the constraints and kind of context that they are coming from in that regard. So that genuine connection initially really helps a lot. And then for me, kind of continuing to sustain that trust is simply around, as long as we agreed on something, let's kind of try to make sure that we are trying to do more or less the same thing, unless we keep each other in the loop that something changed or we cannot no longer do, right? The number one thing, as you said, is right, like you want to have some form of initial connection around clarity, get some information kind of bottom up in terms of, okay, this is what we want to do as a team. And then you go off thinking, I've empowered the team, they're going to do it. 1 to 3 months later, you come and they end up doing something completely different. There's no communication. There were no kind of red flags or signals all along. And that is kind of where the trust equation kind of just breaks down a little bit in that regard. So there is some form of routine upkeep and maintenance when it comes to kind of sustaining trust between two parties or individuals.
Oh, that's great. I'm curious with your specific story, David. You came in to this role as VP of product management, and anytime you come into a new company in a VP level, there's always going to be some unique feelings probably about how this situation played out. Maybe somebody thought that they had that role lined up, in their vision or whatever it could be, right? And I'm obviously just talking hypothetical here. How do you kind of, when you coming into this new role, build that trust with folks off the break, and kind of trying to align some strong relationships with not just your team, but maybe like, folks above you and cross department?
Honestly, I think I had it easy with Sage because like a whole lot of the folks that I work with are half of the senior leadership team is are coaches. So they're great at being able to kind of understanding people, building those relationships. So I had it easy, but I would say if in general, this is something that didn't come to me naturally as an engineer, the idea of actually focusing on building relationships, actually getting to know the person, what they care about, what matters to them, what they want, where they want to grow, how they want their impact. There's a lot of questions to figure out across everybody in the company. Peers, in my case, the CEO, which would be my manager, founder CEO, and my team, right? So my first job, which 5 years ago, I wouldn't have bought in, like my first job, I would think, build this tech, or like make sure we solve this problem, or build this product feature. Now I believe like I start with my first job is understanding the team, who's who, what they want, answering all those questions, building those relationships. And to what Anand said, start building those projects or little things that can help building that trust. So they know I know what I'm doing, and I'm here to be a team player rather than putting my ego first or having the name or whatever. Right. So those two things are the starting point for building that relationship.
I think on that, one of the things that I found to be, there's two things that I think I found pretty successful. One is really acting on feedback, right? Like if I'm providing feedback, this is especially true for people you're managing, right? If I'm providing feedback to you and it's constructive and whatever, I am always requesting it. I know that I can do better. I know that there's ways that I could improve. And I think one of the easiest or best ways to sort of build trust with people is to really act on the feedback that they give you, right? Because that shows that you're not just listening, but you're really taking it to heart. And that's an important part, I think, of building trust. And then the other, when I come into a new role, like I don't know the lay of the land. I don't know things. So I try to really do a lot of like thinking out loud or finding a group of people and saying like, hey, here's my thought process. This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about restructuring things. And this is the reasons why. What are your thoughts? Oh, that's a good point. Whatever. And really, and it's really trying to be open about what my decision making is and how it goes into that. So that this way, 6 months from now, whatever, I might not have to be as involved in whatever similar decision. Like, oh, it's time to restructure the teams. Hey, you guys know what kind of I kind of care about. Why don't you guys go off and put together something that you think will work, and that type of stuff. So I think that that's also an important part, is that sort of, especially in the early days, like that thinking out loud and brainstorming with people, whether it's people that report to you, your peers, people that you just sort of colleagues that you work with. I spent a lot of time with our chief product officer not too long ago, just sort of like, hey, this is what I'm sort of thinking, and let me know when I'm going to step on your toes, and like, otherwise if left to my own devices, I might. And like, I think that's I think that type of stuff is really important in building that trust, is explaining where you're coming from and why you're doing what you're doing. And then over time, those conversations get a lot faster. You don't have to have, or not even as necessary.
Yeah, I'd also add to that, we talk about building a bond with our team members. And, I think about just in your personal life, right? Like, how do you build a bond with folks? You disclose some personal stuff. It doesn't all have to be business. And I know a lot of people will tiptoe around this, like, I don't really want to mix my personal life and my business life. I think within a startup, you kind of have to. It's a little bit more of this, especially early stage, right? I talk about the evolution of Hatch, and my first, team member, my partner, COO, I hired him, and he worked out of my garage, and basically was using the restroom that's in my basement in my house. Talk about getting a little personal. It's the type of thing where I think if you don't let that guard down a little bit and show a little vulnerability, you can only bond with somebody so much. Like, they're always going to be a little bit, just a little friction, a little on the outside. And so the best way that I've experienced with my team here at Hatch has been, we have, personal conversations, we celebrate personal life events that are happening, and we want to be a part of those experiences. We don't want it to be weird of like, I don't want my team members knowing that I'm doing this or that. Obviously there's a line that can be crossed, right? But at the same token, that's what I've seen been the best to really form what I call like the baseline of trust. Is like, it's not just, from a business perspective, it's like, letting your guard down and let them into some of your, who you are as a person, what you're going through, I think has been valuable.
Yeah, I think you bring up that excellent point in the last I'll say, right? The vulnerability piece, that there's definitely some form of exec presence attached kind of with these titles that are a little bit higher fetching for most people who are still starting their career fresh at the individual contributor level, actually. So a lot depends on your demeanor, kind of your body language, and how you make them feel or ease into these conversations. And that is why what I focus most in my one-on-ones, when there is a situation that I have faced in the past, I focus on the pitfalls and the roadblocks that I ran into, versus trying to sing about kind of or praise my own success or how did I overcome, right? That's kind of a segue into how do you empower as well? That is not solving the situation for them, but kind of just leading them to the next best thing that they can kind of think through or question or kind of just figure out on their own. So definitely caution is a much safer kind of thing to showcase and kind of build a genuine connection versus saying, yes, I had that in the past and this is how I solved it. And look, I'm so good at it or I'm great in that regard. Like there's a lot in terms of how you convey things in your past experiences can also help build a genuine connection with someone on what side of you are portraying actually and kind of balancing that out.
Yeah, I agree. My favorite stories to tell are the ones where I totally screwed up, and they seem to hit well. So I think it is an important aspect because I think, again, it gets to learning from your own mistakes, but then also allowing other people to learn from mistakes you've made.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What about go ahead, David.
I was going to say, and I think it will help people see that, like it will help me myself realize that I didn't start where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone a whole lot of years of learning and making mistakes, right? For me, it's a good reminder to not judge my team member. Like, how could you make this mistake, for example,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want to start from myself and then the team member. So that's a good reminder.
Yeah, I think the one-on-ones we've seen, especially in a distributed teams, no longer do quarterly or monthly, one-on-ones work. It's weekly, sometimes daily, and I know like meetings aren't always the best, but these don't always have to just be meetings like about big projects. It's just like, hey, like what's going on? Tell me, yeah, exactly like kind of what you brought up. And I'm just like, what anything that we can help with, or you feel like you're not getting the support you need on, just let us know so we can kind of talk through it. Getting those more frequent, gets ahead of it beyond like that 3-month point where it's like, oh, well, what have you been doing on this project this whole time? It's like you can get in front of that with more frequent connections and one-on-ones. But one of the things I wanted to kind of cut through was, as you're growing these teams, are there any sort of like incentives that you've seen work well, or things that you reward folks with that take on this level of autonomy, or it could be financial, or it could be just, I don't know, praise. I'm curious to hear if there's things that you all have seen through your previous experiences.
I'll say it's around three main things for me, actually. Keeping the financial side aside, I've not really thought of that actually much when it comes to empowering just yet. But the first is making sure that their work is visible, actually, when they did take on kind of these journey on their own to figure stuff out for us, kind of the decisions or the choices they had to make, the outcome. So trying to make sure that I'm trying to, depending on their preference, right? Some people like public praises, some do not, but at least in my circle of influence, making their work visible and known, that is really important. The second is trying to find opportunities which I can continue to provide to individuals and teams who like doing this kind of sort of project work and really are good at it, actually, right? So it's my job knowing that what is on our horizon 6 months, 12 months from now, or what is the next big opportunity we are chasing. Trying to make sure I can align opportunities with interest is important. And then the third is just holding my end of the bargain when kind of they are facing kind of certain not so, I would say, positive experience, either a roadblock or a team dependency or something, right? I want to make sure that I am kind of paying attention and getting it is resolved for them actually in a decent amount of time, right? I just want to make sure that all I want to do is not 100% delegate and then just kind of not help them when they hit their first kind of roadblock. I want to make sure I am there at each point where they can count on me and using me as an escalation point from a support perspective, or just from just chatting about things on how are things going or frustration, right? Like being that sounding board in some sense actually is also important to show that you're genuinely invested in them throughout the process and not just at the start and the finish.
I think Anand covered a whole lot of topics. I'm not going to add much to that. No, it's great. You touched on a whole lot of things that I would think about. For me, the biggest thing is immediate recognition in the way that means to the person. everybody has different drivers and motivations, and acknowledging that, like, I personally want just the sense of accomplishment is good enough for me. But some people would want public, private. Some people would want a little reward. Some people want to hear the word. Like, again, speaking their language, recognizing in their language is a key thing here, which I already talked about.
One of the things my last company, I think, struggled a little bit with was there was a large portion of the organization that really loved like kudos and praise, and it was a very rah team, like sort of focus. And for a lot of the engineers, that sort of didn't hit the right notes. They're more of the like, I want to do my work. And I always struggle to try and communicate to the other parts of the organization, like, look, my engineers don't care whether, like, they know that you have no idea how hard or how easy the work they did was. All they want is for you to use the thing. Like, if I built a table, I just want to see you using the table. Like, I don't need you to praise me about how awesome the table was. Like, for all you know, like for me, that table might just be I nailed 4 legs into a board and it took me 10 minutes, but like it's exactly what you needed. Just use the table. Like, it wasn't ornate, it wasn't whatever. And like, I think that was a struggle for a lot of people to understand, like, the best way to sort of recognize the work done by some people in the organization was just to use the thing and give them feedback about how it was going well and how it wasn't, and not so much like, thanks for building this great table. It's like, it took me 10 minutes in the back with some nails. Like, it's not that big a deal. And so I think that's an important part of, I can't remember which one or both of you said it, but like sort of praising them in the, like recognizing people's work in the way that resonates with them is an important part. I found a lot of engineers really focus on team. And so recognizing the team and the team's effort, because the fact of the matter is, at this point, most engineering isn't individual contributors. There's pull requests and peer review and building on top of what other people have built and so on and so forth. And so it's very rare that there's one person who is really the person who should be getting the kudos or whatever. It's usually a team effort. And so that's also an important part. I can't tell you how many times I would get messages from folks saying like, hey, blah, blah, blah got recognized, but like these other 3 people were just as instrumental in getting that done. And so I think those are all important things, sort of not just recognize the individual, but the team. And as you said, sort of in the way that resonates with them.
Yeah, clearly that table wasn't from IKEA, because that shit would have taken like 4 hours. You just said 4 legs in a board. That's cakewalk. No, well said. I think we could go on and on about this, and we've already kind of mapped out. We'll probably have a couple of follow-up episodes on this topic alone, because it's just it's so relevant in any company, but I think within startups, it's super in your face and very magnified. The smaller the company, and we like really tapping into that C to A, B startup, because I think that's where it's so dynamic and it's so quickly changing. And so, that's really what a lot of like this community and this podcast is about, is tapping those folks that are in those experiences that really, can leverage this information, because it's so experience based. It's not like something you just find it in a book and there's the answer. So let's wrap up on and put a bow on like the main topic, and we'll transition to this next segment called Round Out My Career, where we spin the wheel behind me, and it's got some questions and topics that are kind of crowdsourced from the Hatchpad community, and we'll riff on that for a few minutes. Let's go ahead and give it a spin.
Let's round it out.
So close to that giveaway. Dang. You know what? Let's just give it away. We're gonna give away a Raspberry Pi because we're feeling generous.
Nice.
And then I'm gonna pick a category that's just kind of it's too perfect to not tap into it, just because of one, David, the company that you work for, and then Anand, I know like you're joining like a new kind of mentorship community it seems like every other week. I'm seeing an update on LinkedIn. So I want to talk about mentorship and coaching. And it's a pretty good organic piggyback from this topic that we're talking about. But I'd love to hear more just in terms of like, so for like startup technologists specifically, when you're looking for a mentor, and I know every use case is going to be different, but what are some of the traits, I guess, that you recommend you might want to prioritize if you're looking for a mentor that's coming out of or in a startup kind of ecosystem? I'm not David. I'm not asking you to tell us the algorithm behind Sayge, but how do you all match? I'm curious, like just in general, of like how is that matchmaking made, and what do you recommend? So maybe I'll start with you, David, and then we'll pass it to Anand.
First, I would want to make a distinction between mentorship, advisory, consulting, and coaching. I'm going to leave the advisory and consulting aside, but between mentorship and coaching, there's a big difference. And the same person could do both, but the experience will be different. With mentorship, what I look at is like, I'm looking for someone who's done the thing that I want to do and who has an answer for the questions that I'm asking right now and the challenge that I'm dealing with, right? An example might be scaling an engineering team or even building a product on, I don't know, AWS, SageMaker, whatever that might be. So that's mentorship. With coaching, it's a bit different. The coach doesn't need to have done the thing that I want to do. The coach approaches the conversation with curiosity, open mind, and asks the right questions in a way that helps me find my way. So my coach doesn't need to be an engineer or former engineer, right? So, and then now for me, I have coaches and mentors, and the way I look at them are different. But I want to pause here in case Anand or anybody else want to add anything.
I think that is absolutely wonderful. Go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, I do have different mentors, and whenever I hear like finding mentors, I remember Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In book, where I think she has a chapter, if I remember correctly, like, "Are you my mentor?" Like essentially looking for that long lost mentor that you've never had. And I don't remember what she says exactly, but what I found to be helpful is when I look for a mentor, is like I look at the challenges that I'm having right now and try to find people who can answer that question for me and are willing to answer that question for me. And I don't approach it as like, hey, will you be my mentor for the next year? I approach it like, hey, so-and-so, I see you've done this and this, and I have a question in this area. Give them clarity about where and how they can help me, and give them the offer to have a conversation. So we can have that conversation. And from there, do I get the answer? Are you talking the same language? Is there like chemistry, even for that's a relationship at the end of the day? So, and then first question, second question, fourth question. And then 6 months later, a year later, you're like, oh, here's my mentor in this area, right? So that's how organically I found that things can work out for me.
I couldn't agree with that more on
awesome.
Like the organic growth. That's how, like, my first mentor, I didn't realize she was my mentor probably for 5 years. And then I was like, holy shit, I think she might be my mentor. like I keep going to this woman for advice, and it's working out really well.
There you go.
So yeah, couldn't agree more with that sort of organic, like you just have these conversations with people who are maybe a little bit ahead of you or have done the things that you want to do. I found like a lot of cases, my mentors actually haven't been technology, like the VP of engineering types. They've been product people or sale, in other parts of the organization, but have had enough similar experiences with what I'm trying to do, that, that they can relate and they can articulate it and they can see they've worked with other people who have been in my shoes and can articulate what those people have done as well. So it's not always about like finding that VP of engineering mentor, right? It could be, the two mentors who I had for the longest, who had probably the most impacts on my life. One was a CEO. One was, she started as director of product. She eventually became COO and then CEO of different companies. But those were the two people who probably had the most impact on me from a mentorship perspective. And neither one of them were ever like VPs of engineering or directors of engineering or really overseeing anything other than like didn't oversee day-to-day engineering. So
did you seek them out, Mike, or did they just organically kind of were part of your journey?
They're part of my journey. So both of them were people who at one point were in my line of reporting. I don't know that I think in both cases, I directly reported to both of them at some point. But while they were my manager or my boss or even my super boss or whatever, right? like they weren't my mentor. They were my boss.
Mhm.
It wasn't until I left an organization and then continued those conversations and kept up that network. That's when they sort of transitioned into being my mentor, right? It's because someone who is your boss can't be your mentor. I think that's there's coaches, there's mentors, and there's managers. I can coach people. I can sort of mentor the people who report to me, but I can't really be their mentor. They need an outsider perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an important thing.
Yeah, good point, and good distinction, David, with the difference between mentor and coach. I think that's a good point to bring up. How about yourself, Anand?
Yeah, I think I actually just before this, I was in a meeting where we are rolling out our mentoring program for engineering. And we went through, because this is our first time, we went through this kind of matchmaking process by hand. And we made sure that there's nobody in direct reporting lines, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose of why we want to do this in the first place. And at the same time, we wanted to make sure, as David was saying, right, like we are trying to collect information on both sides, like interests in terms of what you feel you're good at mentoring based on your past kind of accomplishments and career focus, and what as a mentee we would like to seek actually in a mentor. And based on those kind of responses, we went through the process basically of aligning interest on both sides, because there is kind of two ways to structure this. There are some people whose responses were very targeted. I want to go in this area of DevOps, or I want to learn this tool and technology. But there were people who were generally more team focused. I just want to learn how to transition or into kind of individual contributor to management, or how do I navigate change in growth stage companies actually. So that's why we made sure that our kind of question set was focused on both, either specific or kind of theme based, because that is also something that people kind of, depending on what stage they are and kind of what is on their mind currently, might seek different things. So we wanted to make sure it was as kind of effortless as possible from their side, like no surprises when that actual pairing happened, to keep their interests in mind, and also kind of just ensuring that there's nothing that is related to their direct team or reporting lines, for the obvious reasons, as Mike was implying.
I'm curious if you guys have seen if there's any type of like generational or type of difference in terms of how companies are approaching mentorship. Like all of mine was always organic. I never worked at a company, first of all, I never worked at a super large company to begin with. So there didn't really have that ability to have mentoring. But I'm curious if there's just more expectation of people that the company is going to supply this, or maybe not even expectation, but like, I'm just curious if we're seeing like a little bit of a shift in that expectation of individuals and engineers sort of getting mentorship at their company, and that's being somewhat like a benefit that's provided to them.
Yeah, so I'll say, like, for us, the reason that we thought about kind of starting a mentorship program was, we now have a learning and development practice, like as a recognized discipline in the company. So we have a team leading that effort, and we want to focus kind of directly from an organizational perspective, a little bit more structure around career development. There's definitely a lot of mentorships happening in teams or kind of cross guilds actually. Like there's on the back end side, there might be people who are mentoring each other. But what we have found is that happens kind of situationally, or just as a one-off building block, right? In terms of I'm kind of blocked on this thing, or I want to learn this new technology, or I want to solve this problem. And then it happens, and you keep on going to that same person, but it's very situational based, and kind of it dials down. How does that kind of series of conversations, or the topics or problems you keep on solving, how does that kind of connect to a theme or kind of an area that you would want to invest your career or growth in? Maybe you always ask kind of about DevOps, even though you are focused on the front end engineering side. So you want mentorship on, okay, how can I be focused actually on this holistic thing that where I can write code, but also learn a little bit more about build and deploy maintainability actually. So that is where kind of we are trying to put more structure, where people can have a good framework to have continued discussions, rather than these one-off moments and kind of having your immediate people to go to seek advice for, which is mentorship as well. But it's a little bit more kind of on and off depending on the week or the team or the situation you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's a really neat program. It sounds like it's also like kind of scratching their own itch, considering they're rolling out this like a learning and development department. So I think it's a very creative way of baking that in as a perk, but also like satisfying some business goals. It's really neat. I'll kind of like just kind of put my last 2 cents in it as well, and then we can kind of wrap it up. But David, I think you kind of hit it on the head as well. When you're talking about, when you're looking for a mentor, you're looking for somebody who's done like what I'm looking to do and who's done it before, right? And so for me as a founder and CEO, going from a company that a year ago was 9 team members and today we're 24. I was very like specific and trying to seek out somebody who's run like a services business and taken it from that 10 to 25. Because I think that again, like goes back to some of the things we talked about of like, there's some really unique challenges that come along the way in that growth spurt. And then I'm going to probably need a mentor that's taken that from 25 to 50 leap and really kind of dissect, I'm lucky in the sense like my main mentor, and we also would look at him as like a strategic business, like growth advisor, has taken a services company, from scratch to currently at 75. And so I'm fortunate in the sense, like, one, we knew each other at school and kind of, shared co-working space at one point. So we really formed that trust and that kind of bond. But at the same token too, like I know, like I don't necessarily need to go seek somebody else out until until maybe that 75 point gets hit. And then maybe there's some other challenges that he doesn't know about that might come about. But I can't tell you how grateful I am to have him in our corner. And it's just this sense of like, it's almost like getting the test notes before the test. It's like, oh, you've kind of seen this scenario play out. Like, please tell me what you did. I'd love to hear your 2 cents. And it's not always going to be that they did it the right way, but at least it can tell you some things to expect. And I would just say like there's a level of discomfort that comes with serving as a founder of the unknown of what's to come. And if you don't have that, it's so much more difficult. And I wish I would have had it earlier, but it was a little bit later in our evolution that I picked up on it. But I think there's got to be these networks and communities that are out there, which we can rattle a couple of them off. We're actually putting an article about that. That's helpful. One of them being, Rand's leadership Slack community, which is actually where David, that's where you and I kind of first connected, was in that community. And there's a few more out there if you all, have them at the top of your head that you can just rattle off just for our listeners. I think Plato was one, or Round was another one that you just recently joined. Is that right, Anand?
No, Round was the one I joined. Around mentorship, there is, the peer group of RLS, Rand's Leadership Slack. The platforms that are out there are Plato, Mentor Cruise, there's Best Practicer. So those are the 3 that kind of I actively take a part in. Yeah.
If you want to look at the list of all the good mentorship platforms, just look at Anand's profile, LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I think that's everything, guys. I mean, this has been a really awesome discussion. It feels like it's just flown, so naturally, because I think we picked 2 perfect guests to join us. So really grateful for your time. I think it's a testament to the types of folks that join the podcast and contribute are those mentor folks, the ones that really appreciate giving back to others. They usually have seen some of that along their career and they want to reciprocate. So much appreciated that you all came and joined us on the pair program.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.